A newly released Pentagon document offers a peek behind the curtain at how military officials reacted to a former employee going public about UFOs. In December 2017, a front page New York Times story about a secret $22 million Pentagon UFO program went viral around the world. The main subject of this article was Lue Elizondo, a former Department of Defense intelligence officer who had recently resigned. Elizondo claimed to have been the director of this UFO program for nearly a decade. My previous reporting at the Post has revealed that this New York Times article was mostly wrong. Elizondo was not the director of a Pentagon UFO program, and the Pentagon didn't even have a UFO program. Confusing, right? Well, in 2017, when the New York Times article came out, senior officials at the Pentagon were also confused, scrambling to figure out just what the heck this Elizondo guy was talking about. And that's what this document is, an accounting of how the Pentagon initially dealt with the UFO story. It was acquired via a Freedom of Information Act request filed by John Greenwald. Greenwald is an expert in government documents, and he runs the Black Vault. The Black Vault contains millions of pages of government documents released via the Freedom of Information Act. I spoke with Mr. Greenwald about this new revelatory Pentagon document. Okay, John, so let's set the stage here for what you found and what we're presenting today. These documents, a memo, pages from a memo, we learned some things, quite a few things from this. Talk to me about what this new FOIA release reveals.
So, in chronological order, it starts late December. It was an undated memorandum for the record that was created by Gary Reed. He was the boss of OUSDI, now OUSDINS, at the time. So it makes sense that he would be writing this down. And it outlines what Gary Reed at the time was trying to dig in on. In essence, he was stating that Luis Elizondo aggrandized his role in the program, that he essentially had determined at that point, at late December of 2017, they were already saying that Luis Elizondo, from everything they could see, played zero role in the program.
We learned from this new FOIA release that the big verbose resignation letter that Elizondo has claimed was his resignation letter to the Department of Defense saying, I'm resigning because you guys aren't taking UFOs seriously enough. And we learned that this resignation letter wasn't his first resignation letter and perhaps wasn't actually his resignation letter at all.
There was a second, much more simpler resignation letter that was said to be the first one Luis Elizondo had submitted. That was directly to his boss or superior at the time by the name of John Garrity. And on this FOIA release, you can actually see Garrity's signature that he had received it on that letter. Now, put a pin in that because that will become key in a moment. But that was how Luis Elizondo resigned from his department. However, the public was made aware of a different resignation letter, which obviously talked about the anomalous aerial threats and the lack of DoD attention. And that has often been cited by Luis Elizondo TV show on History Channel. This has been very
The
much
basement office.
the basement office.
It's been featured in my episodes. Here's Lue Elizondo's resignation letter. We've showed it on our show. Yeah.
That's right. And it was a valid piece of evidence that everybody was citing, that regardless of what your belief was in Luis Elizondo and his claims, hey, that was his stated resignation letter. However, this memo throws a twist in there. Not only was it the second, but on top of that, they stated that it had a uncertain provenance to it.
They weren't entirely sure where the heck the second letter came from. And they make note of that. They say it was hand delivered by someone other than Elizondo.
Yeah, that was weird. Clearly, there was something going on within the walls of the DoD. They're going, hey, there's something weird with this second letter. So they kept a copy of it, as noted by within the memo. They kept a copy of that second letter, but they did not deliver it to the Secretary of Defense. take that as you will, but clearly there were enough question marks there to question that second letter.
Essentially, when you dive into this document, you learn that Elizondo gave multiple different reasons for leaving the Pentagon to different people. What are some of those reasons?
Yeah, so it was stated that he gave 3 different, reasons for leaving, and one of which included a pressing job opportunity that was said to his boss, shortly after he submitted that first resignation letter. Then, on the phone with Gary Reed, talked about stress for his family as being the reason that he was leaving, and then obviously in that second resignation letter, he was talking about the anomalous threats,
UFOs.
the right,
Yeah.
yeah, without saying UFOs, but he was talking about UFOs.
Yeah.
That was the reason. So they counted 3 different reasons for his resignation letter. That also was kind of a red flag inside the department. And in fact, in one of the memos, it was a follow-up to Secretary of Defense Mattis. His abrupt departure from the department was labeled with a question mark, a counterintelligence alarm,
Right.
meaning Luis Elizondo had high clearance. He knew a lot of national security related secrets. So let's forget about UFOs for a second. That was this potentially a threat? So all these circumstances led into even the Secretary of Defense, from what I can tell here, concerned over his departure. In Reed's second memo, it says, and I'll quote, the letter is not consistent with the first resignation letter Mr. Elizondo personally handed his supervisor. After my phone call with Mr. Elizondo, in which he said he had been secretly working for the secretary, I checked with 2 senior officials that have knowledge of special programs. Our collective assessment was that Mr. Elizondo's claims were not credible, and the letter, meaning the second resignation letter, was not worthy of the secretary's personal attention.
And another thing that's important to note is, this is all in reaction to that big New York Times article in December 2017 that claimed Lue Elizondo was the director of a Pentagon UFO program and that he ran this program for many years. You know, your work and investigation, my reporting for the New York Post has revealed that that story is riddled with errors and factual inaccuracies, that there's no evidence to support much of Elizondo's claims. But it's interesting to see this memo, for example, right here, where they discuss, that hey, he's claiming that he was the program manager for investigating UFOs and other aerial threats. And then it says, I discussed his claims with senior officials who would likely have known of such an arrangement, but was unable to substantiate them.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot of that where senior officials were saying, what the heck? Like, no, like we don't know anything about this. We've never heard of this. We don't know about this. We can't substantiate this. We can't validate this. To me, it makes me wonder, well, then how did the New York Times run that article? If senior officials at the Pentagon aren't able to substantiate, validate, or confirm any of this, then what the heck was the original story even based on? For more about these documents, please see the link in the description below.